Hello and welcome to another episode of Suited and Booted, the F1 podcast. For those of you that are not driving, you may notice that we're now a video podcast, or at least this episode is. So please do give us even more feedback. Let us know what you think, if you like seeing our faces, or if you just like hearing our voices, or if you don't even like hearing our voices, let us know. We'd love to hear all the feedback. We have just wrapped up Monza, the Temple of Speed. Pretty exciting race. I mean, qualifying was extremely exciting. It's the first weekend in a while where it hasn't actually rained at all. And I mean, I was saying before, like we needed some wet weather to have that excitement. But quali was very surprising indeed.
It was. I mean, qualifying was extremely close between Carlos, Max, and Charles. I mean, they were less than a tenth. I think 500ths of a second between each other. Yeah. Followed by George, Sergio, Alex Albon in P6. I mean, he's been, I think he's been the strongest Mercedes engine car or driver on the grid so far, like since the summer break. And we've actually got someone asking us to talk a little bit more about Williams too, because he wants to understand what's the key to their success. Why have they been doing so well compared to teams like Mercedes? So we'll touch on that a little bit later.
Yeah, I want to know what he did during the summer break.
Yeah.
I want to know what yacht he was on, because that boy is just like locked out. Yeah.
Super sweet start, right?
And then we've got Oscar, Lewis, Lando, and Fernando to cap off the top 10. So I can't really understand. We saw strong performance between both Aston Martin and Alpine as well in Zandvoort. Really high downforce track, but they seem to be struggling so much here in Monza. It's almost as if they forgot to take the downforce off.
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, guys, like it's good to see the Ferraris up front at the moment. It's been a while since they actually qualified on pole position, but you're right, Ron. Judging from Alpine's loss of performance, Aston's loss of competitiveness edge, it's quite disappointing. Mm-hmm. But in hindsight, there's good battles up front, so that's very healthy. But you're right, Albon. Like, where did that pace come from? Mm-hmm. Because it's not the tires, it's not the car. Is it the driver?
Is it the girlfriend?
Is it the girlfriend?
I think it's the girlfriend. Honestly, he looks so happy. Yeah. I know our producer's going to cut this out as well if we go down a rabbit hole, but I'm just going to say, I think it is his girlfriend. They're like a power couple.
Yeah.
And we're going to end it there.
Yeah.
But I mean, in terms of the kind of performance of the cars, you were saying Aston not really there. I do agree. And Monza is one of those tracks where, because it's so unique, it's so fast, right? A lot of tracks around the world, you've got that good combination of tight corners, very, very slow speed. You got your little bits of high speed, you got your medium speed. So you need a car that's very versatile in all those conditions. But Monza is on the other end of the spectrum. It's just fast, right? It's high speed. That's why they tone down everything when it comes to the aero body work. You can see online those kind of side-by-side comparisons of the rear wing, right? Most tracks, they have that fat rear wing. It's like taking up so much space. And then Monza is just kind of like streamlined. They're going like full dolphin mode.
Yeah.
But even with that happening, right, we know that, okay, maybe the Aston Martin isn't doing so well at the high speed. You still have Alonso qualifying 10th, right? He's in the top 10, which is still commendable, right? You're in the top 50%. But man, I've got here in my notes, I wrote Stroll P20 lol.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's not the car.
Ferrari just went P3 in the Constructors' Championship. Is that right? P3. So they're ahead now of Aston. And it seems that Alonso's the only one doing all the heavy lifting in the team.
Genuinely.
Yeah. Stroll's he's not even contributing anything.
Funny story. Financially.
Funny story, after quali, there was a statement immediately by Mike Crack, the team principal of Aston. And he said, we're fairly confident of Stroll's turnaround for his performance to stay in Aston. So wait a minute. I mean, the guy's been outbeaten by a 42-year-old double world champion, and you're confident. I mean, you're still confident for him to stay in that seat. They have a reserve driver who's a F2 champion.
What's his name?
Drugovic. Drugovic.
Yeah.
I think he might be a better candidate. I don't know.
Yeah.
But money talks, right?
I think Lance should turn around and go back to F2.
Yeah.
And come back to when he's
When
ready.
the share price goes up, the seat stays, man.
But what is the exit plan, right? I mean, even for the father, like, at what point does the dad decide my son is no longer going to race in this team? He's still in his prime. He's young. I mean, Stroll is 26, 27.
Yeah.
So he's got, I mean, judging by his teammate, he's got like another 20 years ahead of him at least. But what, another 20 years in P20?
What? So I was going to say, what Stroll should do is buy a second team.
Yeah.
And put Lance in that second team.
Aston Tari. No, fair enough. But I mean, like, for reals though, I don't know.
But that's the problem about young drivers jumping into Formula One very early. I mean, he's never driven big cars. He's only did karting and Formula 4, Formula 3, won the European Championship and drove for Williams. I remember he did like 25 days or 30 days of testing prior to his Williams drive. But then again, he was in his early 20s.
That's right.
It's the same like Max, right?
Yes.
You've gone into Formula One so young and so early. And when you're 26, where do I go now, right? I'm not performing, and Aston's probably the best team I have a chance with. Is it like Latifi and Nick, where you start going back to school?
Nick Latifi in driver gossip has just signed up for his MBA. He's going to be at London School of Business.
Yeah, that's
Needs a backup plan.
Good job.
Yeah. And
Deployed plan B.
Exactly. And Nick's at Harvard. There was a shot of him attending the launch of the E1 Powerboat series. So boats the next thing. I mean,
So wheels don't work for him.
you sacrifice your whole life to get there and back to school.
Yeah. No, that is fair enough. It is cutthroat for young drivers. It is a awfully exclusive club. But speaking of young drivers, I put here in my notes as well, those of you that are watching this on video, now you know that like none of this is just retained in our brains. We're just constantly referring to our notes. But also on my notes, Lawson, respectable P12. I was saying we needed the wet weather to have an interesting weekend. But I think Lawson was one driver that was kind of like, please, for the love of God, give me dry weather all weekend. To finally find the limit of the car. Yeah. And he was 1/10 behind Yuki Tsunoda, which I think is pretty damn good.
Yeah. In his second race, Q2 in his second race, 1/10 of his teammate. Very respectable.
Yeah.
It's not a competitive car, guys, to jump in a scenario from Zandvoort, just having one FP3. And, it's not the best debut Grand Prix because of the conditions, etc. But he's never put a foot wrong. It's like he's destined for it. He's mature at it. Even facing the media and how he presents himself as a Red Bull driver, he's deserves that seat, to be honest with you guys. And I feel and I hope that that seat comes up to me.
I'm glad he had that opportunity, because then now he's proving himself. He's not making silly mistakes that new drivers come in and make, like Sergio Perez going off in free practice.
Remember Tsunoda during his debut with the cursing and locking up tires and crashing to teammates, etc. Yeah, I mean, Lawson's done a good job.
Ricardo would be punching a wall if he could. He cannot, because he still has a broken wrist. So I'm sure he's going to be kicking a lot of stuff because he knows it. Again, we said this last episode. I think this is like absolute worst case scenario for him. Liam Lawson is doing a good job, and we can talk more about how he did in the race after this. I just want to touch on one more driver that may not be performing as well. We were talking about how good Albon is doing.
Yep.
But Sargent, man, I mean, that delta, I mean, he qualified P15, and you've got Albon again into Q3. It just doesn't look good.
Yep.
I mean, James Vowles did mention before the race, what were your expectations this weekend and the upcoming races? And he said, we're in a good window, but Sargent really needs to prove himself to retain that seat. Despite having sponsorship and having the American name, American flag, but that doesn't do justice enough that Williams drive. I think James, previously during his years in Honda, he's groomed drivers like Mike Conway, Di Grassi, and etc. So he knows what a young driver needs. So if the tools are given and you're not performing, might have a short span of a lifespan in Formula One. So it's very difficult. It's a cutthroat world. But yeah, he's got only a couple of races left to turn that season around.
Yeah, I think they could have done better with the driver pairing, in my opinion, for Williams. I mean, if you look at the race results, you've got the 2 Red Bulls, Max and Sergio, followed by 2 Ferraris, Carlos and Charles, then Mercedes, George and Lewis, and then you've got Alex Albon going solo, and then you've got Lando, Fernando, Valtteri, and then Liam finishing in P11, and then the rest is, we don't really care about the rest.
Yeah. I don't actually know what the rest of
exactly. I mean, I think Logan, if he showed improvement, especially after the summer break, like getting at least closer two tenths behind Alex, sure, he's shown signs that he has what it takes to be there in a Williams, but he hasn't shown any of that raw speed or raw talent that maybe Williams think he has.
Yeah, adding to that, actually, Ron, thinking about it, is the level of maturity as well. Having to deal with fighting for championships, having to deal with, for example, Helmut Marko, under the program. Maybe Sargent was a bit too early. I know he finished 4th on his debut year in F2, but then again, is that really enough? Lawson did well as well, comparing to a young driver, but then they sent him to Japan in a world that's completely unknown. Not a lot of people speak English. You don't know the racing, you don't know the tires, but man, he's fighting for the championship. So sometimes the level of maturity when he arrives to Formula One, I've raced in Japan, I raced in Europe, I've done ample amount of karting, maybe Sargent's a bit immature to where he's at.
I think this raises a kind of key point that I think a lot of maybe other pundits can't pick up because they've never raced before. And it really is around drivers just clicking with the car, right? You can be a super fan and be like, oh, well, this driver won this and this and this and this. And yeah, you can be P1 up until F2, but the minute you get to F1, it is a different car. It's a different car every single time. And if you don't click, you just don't click, right? And it doesn't mean that you're a bad driver per se, but if you don't click, and because it's so cutthroat, that is enough of a reason to kind of be kicked out, because you have 2 races to show it. There are so many other drivers that can click, and Verstappen is a great example of that. Verstappen can get into any car in any championship, in any country, in any condition, and we know that he is so talented that he will click. But if you're a driver that's done tens and hundreds of hours of testing to get to a position where you're comfortable in an F3 car, then you do hundreds of more hours of testing to be comfortable into an F2 car, and you do win. And then you get to F1, and there's a limit on testing, and you don't have time to click.
I think
it is what it is.
We touched on this as well in the previous podcast, saying that you can be an extremely talented driver to be in Formula One, but you need to be exceptional if you want to win in F1, like Max. There was a meme saying that back in 2015, people were saying, Max is too young to be in Formula One. Yeah. And then now they're like, now every race is won by either Max or Verstappen. So you need to have that little bit that's just above, like you have to be a Fernando, a Lewis, a Max. Charles has yet to sort of prove himself. Carlos has done very well in Monza. But there are drivers that just come and go from Formula One, like, let's say, Buemi, Alguersuari, guys like these that they have a shot, they do it, but they can't really make it, and they're off. Yeah. But you're right, it doesn't mean that they're not talented. They're super talented still to be able to get there, but they're just not world champion material.
I mean, yeah, look at Jasmine.
So tell us, when you won Carlos...
Yeah, we've got him on camera now, so you can see the tears flowing down. Actually, all of our faces, because we're all pretty much retired at this point. Well, at least I am. Moving swiftly on, this is the most time we've spent talking about qualifying, and we still needed to kind of touch upon the top 3 just because it was that amazing. I think there were a lot of disappointments, as we've just spent a lot of time talking about, but the top 3 was insane. I mean, as you were saying, 0.067 seconds between the top 3. Now, to put that in perspective, I think the general rule of thumb when we race cars is that, or even go-karts, 1/10 of a second is 1 car length in time, right? So like actual distance. So if you're racing with someone and you're 1/10 slower, you generally lose 1 go-kart length or 1 F1 car length per lap. So to be 0.067, I don't have a tape measure. We don't have an F1 car here, but it's like that much.
Like a front wing.
Let's say it's a front wing between 3 drivers on a track that has how many corners?
A total about 12, I think.
12-ish corners.
Yeah.
And you're traveling at 300 plus kilometers an hour. I mean, that's pretty damn insane. So speaking of talent, I think all three of those drivers up front do have it. So good to see Sainz up there.
Yeah.
We're going to be on TikTok, so I'm going to do my Carlos Sainz impersonation. Hello, my name is Carlos Sainz. I'm a driver for Scuderia Ferrari. We are here in Monza, and he got P1. That's it. I'm done. I'm going home after this. Yeah. Anything else you guys want to touch upon? It was like Leclerc pole, then Verstappen pole, and then the Tifosi going mad, as they always do.
I mean, to see Ferrari do well in Monza is always a happy sight. Whether or not you're a Ferrari fan, actually everyone's a Ferrari fan, whether or not they admit it.
Yeah.
But especially at their home track with all the, what do you call it, Tifosi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The guys in red.
It's so incredible to see that, especially like during the podium ceremony. Everyone's like just shouting Carlos and no one's really giving a crap.
Yeah. What do you guys think of the new Italy special outfit with the new
crap? It looked like McDonald's waiters.
I know.
I'm gonna say, Ferrari has the biggest budget of any F1 team, but for some reason they just can't hire a decent designer.
I know.
I think they're like the home of fashion, sexy supercars, right? But they just, I don't know, like even it's just like very blocky and just
even the color combination's a bit really
it looks rubbish.
Yeah,
it looks rubbish.
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
it looks absolutely rubbish. I mean, even the Polizia in, what do you call it?
One more time.
Carabinieri in Italy.
Is that like pasta?
No, that's a police with a different uniform.
Yeah, carbonara.
Carabinieri. Yeah, they get their uniform designed by Armani.
Yeah.
Do you know that?
There we go.
Yeah, fun fact.
I don't actually think it looks that nice either, right? It's the blue.
No, it's a black and
with the like gold trims and all that. Yeah.
Not
well, they can't dress like Carabinieris in Ferrari.
But they could at least get like a
Armani to do it.
Armani to like design their suits. Why not?
Yeah, probably ran out of money with the kind of Armani.
Too busy paying salary. On the topic of the Tifosi, let's talk about how important it is to actually have a strong home crowd. And look, I know everybody says this like as a very cheesy thing where it's kind of like, oh, they're in front of their home crowds, they get energy. But I think we can't underestimate how psychological sport is, right? When you do play in front of your home crowd, you get like a little 5% performance boost. And the Tifosi is like next level. I think it's Tifosi, and then Japanese fans, and then everybody else.
Yeah.
So I feel like Ferrari needed that. They kind of got that, and they're probably going to lose that 10% performance bonus in the next race.
That's right. I mean, being a Ferrari driver is a mega privilege, right? But having to perform in that pressure because you're carrying such a big brand behind your shoulders. But what I find most impressive is the drivers are all multilingual. So they do their interviews in Italian with the Italian press. And that is another bonus of media and branding exposure. Then they do their interview in French, and then they do it in English.
Yeah.
And then so on and so forth, right? And having the Ferrari brand to do multiple languages and having to do launches before the race weekend, right? With the new outfits, with the new car, with the new store, like it's such an incredible race weekend to be at.
Yeah.
But sometimes to manage that time before a race weekend, you don't want to be worn out before the free practice, right?
Yeah. Okay.
You go, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m, you're just tending to sponsorship events. But they did. They performed. It might be a good season turnaround for them. They've been crashing, and we were talking in the last few podcasts about Carlos having talks with Audi and preparing 2026 plans and etc. But Formula One and Ferrari moves very swiftly. One race can just turn around the next 3 to 5 years. So I think they've got a good base to work on. It gives them a superb confidence boost at the moment, and high hopes for Ferrari to at least peep up a few more positions.
I don't know. I think they're just going to bin it the next race. I think it was just a Monza one-off. I think they just they felt the energy, and I think they're just going to keep for the next couple of races. All right, let's actually talk about the race now. Have either of you raced at Monza?
I have actually, yeah.
Okay,
from the view.
I've dreamt of racing there before.
Yeah, so have I. PlayStation a couple of times, and that's about it. What's it like?
Well, there's a reason why it's called the Temple of Speed. It's just, driving into Monza, it's a huge park. It's called Parco di Monza, and a portion of the park is a circuit. So it's been there since the 1930s, 33, and they actually celebrated their 101 year anniversary over the weekend. So you get goosebumps coming to the track because everything is original, nothing fancy about the grandstands, nothing fancy about the paddock or anything.
Just a historic.
It's just pure racing. And there's a portion of the track that they keep still maintaining it, which is the big oval.
The banked bit.
The bank oval, which is super impressive. But yeah, at the time when I was racing, it was mostly Formula 3 and World Series. I had a big crash at the main street.
Tell us more.
I was battling with Sorensen, and we touched wheels and crashed into the wall directly at where the Tifosi grandstand was.
All right.
And by the time the car stopped, I got out of the car, and the first person that was there was my mom. So my mom was actually sitting at the Tifosi stand, in tears. But anyway...
was the crowd cheering?
Not really. Everyone was taking pictures because Sorensen flipped and I ended up in the wall and stuff.
True.
But yeah. And the sad story at the time was also the time when I had the crash was the same time when MH370 happened. So it was
Wow, that's
a bit of a kerfuffle. Yeah,
that's a mess.
But yeah, Monza is an awesome circuit. Nothing has changed since. I know the parabolica curbs change every year, but racing there gives you super spine-tingling goosebumps.
Okay, well then you can give us a bit more insight into how difficult overtaking is. Some pretty good moves up and down the field. At the start of the race, a couple laps in, we saw Albon slim shadying it around the outside. Held his own, P7. I mean, he lost a couple positions, but I think you wanted to talk a bit more about Albon. Or we should end it on, it's all down to his girlfriend.
We had this question from Mr. James Tong, who asked he wants to know more about Williams' improvement. How and why, where did they find, this amount of speed in such a short time? Is it James Vowles, who's basically the mastermind behind it all after he left Mercedes? Or who is and what is the key to their success?
I think operationally they're a lot more streamlined than before. Previously maybe with Jos Capito, he came from Volkswagen in a very big organization, so maybe the organization chart was a bit more broad, but for James, even though he was from Mercedes, the core race team was still the same guys from BAR, Honda, Braun, and Mercedes. They called them the Brackley boys, right? So I think he's done well on that. They've got two experienced engineers. One of them is Gaetan, who used to be highly successful in ART and developing young drivers. He's done DTM, World Endurance Championship, and now Formula One for a couple of years. So he's got a good baseline to work on, but I can see a streamlined organization to pinpoint problems and make better decisions than before. And Albon was from a big team as well, so now having things a bit more streamlined seems to be less of a headache to set up that car. But I think they're in an uphill trajectory. If they had two cars within the top 10, their development is going to be way ahead than others.
So in summary, they've got better leadership, better direction, and they know what they're doing now.
Exactly.
And they have a long-term plan, right? I think we can't underestimate the power of a good operational head. I don't watch football, and I've asked this question to kind of death, but maybe it'll relate more to our audience. But if a manager in football can have such a massive effect on the same, is it 10 or 12 guys? I really don't watch football. Is it 12?
12?
Yeah. It's so embarrassing.
I think it's 12.
11? I don't know. Whatever. You're 10 to 12 guys. I don't watch football. If changing that one guy can have an effect on a team's performance, imagine the effect of one person where there's engineering involved, where there's R&D involved, where there's pit crew involved, where there's, again, actual athletes involved, right? Your possibility for change is multiplied by 1,000.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So I agree. I think Williams has finally taken the right steps after years and years of just mistakes and mess and disappointment. And I'm really, really hoping Albon can get that car back on the podium. The Italian Grand Prix also saw Max Verstappen take his 10th consecutive win. So now he smashed through that record held by Sebastian Vettel. I mean, do we want to? I act the same way every single time. It's like, do we want to say anything else about the guy? Like,
I'm so happy for him.
Are you actually happy for him?
Yeah.
Well, there was a pre-grid talk with Jackie Stewart before the race, and Jackie is a multiple world champion, and he had his own team, and he's a well-established person in motorsport. And one thing to note about Max in any race weekend he goes to is that he has a clear mind. Like, he doesn't look pressured, he doesn't look intimidated, he doesn't look stressed. So when you see other compatriots, for example, Norris was like, how's the car? Yeah, there's a bit of understeer, oversteer, whatever. And then when you look at Ferrari drivers, it could have been better. Home crowd, blah, 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 blah. But when it comes to Max, when he presents himself, it's good. It's good. We can be better here, and here. But we'll see. We'll see next repractice, or we see next quali. And then when he qualifies second, he's like, it's okay. I know I have a good car for the race.
Yeah, it doesn't make up some excuse saying, we could have gained a 10th here and there.
Correct.
Yeah.
And there's this Sky F1 pundits who grabbed him before the race. So, Max, what's your expectation for the race? Nothing less than P1. Wow.
That confidence.
Nothing less than P1. And that's it. The conversation ends. So that clear mind and that level of confidence in that car, in the environment. I mean, Ron, we were talking about, Honda's the only engine power unit with Red Bull, right?
Yeah.
Under RBPT. Doesn't matter, high downforce, low downforce. You look at other teams' interviews. We don't have enough grunt here. We don't have torque here. We don't have battery deployment here. Red Bull's like,
we got Max.
Yeah. Wherever we go, we're good.
Winning 10 Grand Prix in a row. Wow.
I mean, it's the weird thing is, right? Like, when you get to know other racing drivers, that I'm going to say us now, right? A lot of us are faking it. You got a bunch of guys that are nice, they're funny. You got these two clowns, and that when you know them as friends as well, that they're actually fun, nice guys. If you look like you're racing against Lando Norris, the guy is this gamer on weekends. He's a little bit timid. He's a little bit awkward. He's a funny guy. So when you're racing hard against them, you're like, okay, I know that he's faking this press conference, or I know he's faking this interview to come across as more psychologically attacky, right? He's trying to have that game face on. But the thing with the game face is, I know that with a lot of drivers, it's a mask.
Yeah.
Right? With Perez, it's a mask. That guy's a softie, right? Minister of Defense, king of softie. And when he is doing an interview, it's just because he's been kicked up the backside by some Red Bull senior exec. And he's like, oh, now I have to, pretend to be aggressive. But the thing with Verstappen is, that's actually who he is. That's what makes him so much more terrifying on track.
Yeah.
So if I'm racing against Verstappen, I know that he's not just pretending to be aggressive. The guy is aggressive.
Yeah.
And that just brings you to a whole other level of confidence on track.
Yeah. And it's amazing how he can switch on and off so well. He was just playing paddleboard with Lando, Alex, and George in Monaco before Monza. And it's all good and giggles, laughing giggles. And then straight to race weekend, boom.
I bet that was the
mindset to win.
Aggressive paddleboarding.
Nothing less than P1.
Just on the coast of Monaco.
That's brilliant, man. That's brilliant.
So okay, we'll leave it at that. Max, king on the streets, king on the, I was going to say sheets, on the sea, king of paddleboarding as well.
It's not paddleboarding. It's the paddle.
Like it's like tennis.
Oh, damn.
Paddle tennis.
All right. We're talking about rackets.
Yeah,
I just
and missed the mark. It's 11 people.
So our producer's going to completely cut the segment if you see us jump because I'm an idiot. Moving swiftly on. What else do we have to talk about? We've got let's talk about Perez then. We talk about Max. We're going to naturally talk about Perez. We're usually bullying Perez. Now we get to do it on camera. I have here, finally back on form, question mark. It looked like he was playing on easy mode. I'm going to say that's down to the car. Back on form, maybe because he finished P2, but come on, he didn't even qualify that well.
No.
No? I feel like I said something controversial then.
No. I completely agree, because even in the race, it looks like he took a long time to get to the position where
it was messy.
It was very messy. He could have, when he wanted to overtake George, it took him a couple of tries, when it should have been, all right, I'm going to attack here, overtake, move on to P3, P2, and so on. But it took him a long time to sort of get there.
And he kept cutting chicanes and stuff. I mean, it wasn't even like, I'm going to make this move and make it stick. It was a kind of like, I'm going to make a move, I'm going to lock up, I'm going to keep going straight because I'm going to try and gain more time. Yeah. Which, is that actually a tactic?
and there was one where he's saying on the radio like, oh, George didn't leave me any space. But when you look at the replay, their cars, they could fit 3 cars in between. So it's these kind of things where I don't think he's performing at his best. Yeah. And it's not looking great on it, to be fair.
Yeah, even with a P2. I would say it's a disappointing P2. I'm probably going to get flack for that after this episode.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a year left in his contract, right? And what I admire the media is that every single weekend they keep pressing to Christian Horner or Helmut Marko. Is he staying? Is he staying? Is he staying? And that's not healthy when you see the tabloids and news saying, Perez a question mark for 2025 or 2024, whatever it may be. Knowing Red Bull, they can just drop anyone at any time, right?
And they will.
Exactly. So, but there's a paddock gossip about Norris beginning to get the ball rolling to talk with Red Bull. Ooh. So, I mean, we don't know. There were shots seeing about them having a chat and etc. Anything can happen there. But yeah, the pressure from Perez is not looking right. And qualifying has not been an improvement for him. Yeah. We know as racing drivers how crucial qualifying is, especially at Monza. Yeah. So difficult to overtake. Position placements on the grid and scenarios for pit stops and all that kind of stuff. So to summarize, yes, it took quite a long time. They had split strategies, but it made the team more stressed to work even harder.
Yeah,
it's
unnecessarily.
Yeah. So, he needs to turn that season around this last few races.
I've read an interview with Hamilton basically saying that, he's had a stronger teammate lineup than Verstappen ever has, right? He had Nico Rosberg, won a world championship. He had Bottas, etc., etc. He had Alonso at one point as well. So let's say Norris does make the move to Red Bull and Verstappen finally has a strong teammate. I mean, what kind of dynamic are we going to get to see? Because we're talking about how mature he is, but I think it's easy to be mature when you're in the fastest car on the grid and you've got Captain Slow as your teammate. And you're like, oh yeah, this is the best teammate I've ever had. Like, yeah, of course you're going to say it's the best teammate you've ever had. But if you have someone competent, I mean, is that you're going to see another side of Max? Are you going to see that more aggressive, reckless side of him coming back?
Well, it depends what race and what situation, right? I think at this juncture, Max is looking to seal that championship. So as this number 2 or, fighting for that battle, is to see whether that battle is actually worth it. Who is he defending? At the moment, they won a Red Bull 1-2 in the championship and they won that Constructors. Mm-hmm. So I think the core now is for them to seal Max's title and then seal Constructors. And then once they seal that, they can help Perez to be number 2. Then they seal everything. I think they're on the right path, but they have to look in their mirrors simply because of Perez, right? Yeah. Alonso is always a threat. Every single race he's scoring points, except in Spa where he had a shunt. But it's crucial to know who you're battling. I think they have to pick their battles a bit to safeguard that championship.
Yeah. Nobody's going to enjoy being Max's teammate. Yeah. That's a given. And it's hard to believe Lando might actually make the move if a good deal is struck, because he wants to be the number 1 driver, not settle for second in the team. Anyone who goes and pairs with Max, you're going up, he'll be third, 3-time world champion by then. Yeah. A guy who's got already 10 consecutive wins. He's Red Bull's golden boy. how are you going to fight that? How are you
How do
going
you
to
sign a deal to 2028?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna lie. I hope it happens. From a entertainment standpoint, I kind of want a repeat of the Alonso Hamilton saga. You know, I want really just sassy, bombastic side eye like pit stops. You know, I want behind the scenes drama in the pits where they're maybe not throwing helmets at each other. That's extreme. I do not condone this. Yeah. But I don't know. I just want a bit more excitement, you know, at the back. And I know Verstappen is the golden boy to give that as well. Because if you mess with Verstappen, I mean, he will bite back twice as hard.
It would be easier to be teammates with Max as a complete rookie because you have no expectation.
Yeah.
You're the underdog. You just do as you do. You know Max is gonna do Max.
Yeah.
And then you just do your own thing. But if you're already like the number one driver in McLaren, for example, going to Red Bull as the number two, you're expected to perform as well, if not better, than Max as well. Yeah. So you have a lot of pressure. You can't deal with that, and it's just going to go up in smokes.
I think you have to judge by whether you can drive an Adrian Newey car. You know, we've seen drivers like Gasly, Albon, Kvyat, who jumps in there and they struggle. You know, they struggle to drive a high rate car where, for the viewers listening, it's a car that's a bit more pointed up the nose, which is very sharp on entry. And even Danny Rick, you know, he's won a couple of races in there, but he didn't win championships.
Yeah.
But Danny Rick then drove with Renault and McLaren, and he couldn't drive any other cars, right? So now whether Norris can adapt in that end of the spectrum, I mean, judging from the rumor and where he's at, Perez has settled in quite well, maybe after having a hefty amount of experience in Formula One, driving different cars, different teams, and etc. But driving an Adrian Newey car is surely not easy. So being a number two is one thing, but to close the gap with someone familiar in setting up the car like Adrian Newey, only a handful can do that.
Yeah, and if Norris makes the move, that does leave Piastri from number two to potentially number one, depending on who his teammate will be. But as a number two, he had 2 collisions this race. Kind of sloppy. Wasn't too bad, but still a little bit sloppy. First with his teammate into the chicane, knocked his front wheel with Lando's rear wheel. And then later on with Hamilton, that was very, very messy as well.
Yeah, Hamilton apologized for that though.
He did, but still a bit of a scrappy race, more than what McLaren would have wanted. I mean, that scrap with Hamilton potentially cost Piastri even more positions and potentially the race. It could have gone so much worse with both of them going off the track. I don't know. The McLaren kind of all over the place. They're a bit moody.
Yeah, I think they're trying to get 2 cars in the top 8 or whatever it was, and Piastri did that incident. I mean, Ron, we were watching earlier. Why would you do it on your outlet?
Yeah.
You know, battling with a teammate and rubbing tires and rubbing bodywork. Is that necessary? I mean, you have fresh set of tires where you can battle later on, right? But at the same time, they look. Maybe the expectations from Zandvoort was, you know, they're going to be on the front row again and etc. But that didn't materialize. They don't look comfortable as well. But one thing I find is, I'm sure we've watched Formula One races for many years, and looking at the chicane, you could normally see 2 cars going into the chicane, but current Formula One cars are so big.
Way too big.
You know, coming from junior formulas like Oscar and etc., you can't fit 2 cars anymore.
Yeah.
And you can see like some of them on a full lock and they just let go because, you know, with the 18-inch tires and the big rear wing, and you can't fit 2 cars anymore. So it looks so scruffy, even from a McLaren standpoint, but even other cars, you know, like Lewis trying to open up to go into the chicane, and he rubbed wheels with Piastri. So it might just also be Monza with the current spec F1 car.
Yeah, and a lot of the drivers have that muscle memory. I feel like overtaking in this new era of car over the last couple of years, I personally don't enjoy the overtaking maneuvers as much because it's just them sticking it around the outside, right? These cars with their floor and all of their winglets, they generate so much downforce that even if you were to go offline onto the dirty bit of the track, we're seeing them go side by side. Whereas if you do that in junior formula, where there's not as much downforce. I mean, that's where you twitch, and then you go off the track.
Yeah.
Right. Correct. Yeah.
And so I don't know, like I see all of these like move of the race, overtake of the race, and I look at it and I'm kind of like, there was no. Okay, I'm gonna say there's no skill. I'm also gonna get flagged for that. There was some skill. There is less skill involved in comparison to dive bombing accurately, sending it on the inside, nailing your braking point. I mean, it's so hard to judge a braking point when you're not actually on the racing line. So I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. It might be better racing in some of the newer tracks. It might be more suited in tracks like Abu Dhabi, for example, or we don't know. Vegas might be a street circuit. But yeah, it's the car's too big, guys.
It's getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah,
and it makes the racing dull. Because it's Bridgestone times were the best.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, Formula One is following the kind of route of Mini Coopers. They're just getting bigger and bigger. Let's talk about the last bit of the race now. I really want to focus on Ferrari. We can't not focus on Ferrari being at Monza. Were they battling too hard at the end? I mean, look, maybe they didn't have the package to ultimately win the race, but I don't think they did themselves any favors. That scrap at the end between Carlos and Charles, I don't know, I was kind of on my seat. They were locking up multiple times, ruining their tires. There were points where they looked like they were going to collide. And it's kind of like, you have a secured P3. This is one of the best kind of duo positions you've had in front of your home crowd. And you're about to hand Russell a podium.
Yeah.
Would you let them race?
It's fun to watch.
Yeah. If you were a team boss, I mean, you are a team boss.
If you trust the drivers enough to not completely, throw that position away, then it's great for the fans, right?
Yeah.
For their home crowd fans.
If they finish.
Yeah. But if something goes wrong and you do a Hamilton-Rosberg in Spain, then nobody wins at the end of the day.
Yeah.
The fans are going to go home crying. Ferrari's got 0 points. So it is a very risky move. So as a yes and no. It's a yes and no.
I mean, if it's a calculated risk, right, to dive bomb, then it's fine. You want to have the final podium spot in Ferrari colors in Italy, right? But it's not worth that risk. I mean, guys, third and fourth is better than DNFs, right? Why even bother, right? I know Ferrari let them race. I know they don't want a number one, number two, but they have to be mindful about where they are. This recovery means a lot to them.
Yeah, it was very, very close. Ultimately, Tifosi did get a podium. It was, albeit a very disappointing one, having started on pole position. But to round off the Italian Grand Prix, I'd say pretty exciting. Sad day for the Tifosi. So as is tradition, it's going to be the first time we do it on camera. We're going to do our win it or bin it. And once again, I don't actually know who our win it or bin it's are.
Thought about that.
Think about it. You got like 3 seconds.
You're going to go with win or bin? Win first.
Win it first.
Win it first.
Ready?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
Albon.
Ooh.
Okay.
I forgot about Albon. Sorry, no, yeah. I'll go with
Okay, we know why Max would be number one. Albon, just, I guess, solid performance in an underrated car.
P7 race?
Yep. Solid weekend.
P1 in our hearts. Okay. Bin it. Ready? You got it?
Yeah.
You got to say it. Okay, bin it. 3, 2, 1.
Sargent.
Oh, all different. Okay.
Yeah.
Who did you say?
Perez.
Why?
Just didn't impress me.
It's Perez.
Yeah.
Okay, that's enough. Who did you say?
Sargent. I think he's got to go.
Okay.
Sorry to say, but he hasn't turned his season around, and it's already almost towards the end of it.
Yeah, fair enough. I said Stroll because for all the reasons that I mentioned just now, Stroll is just disappointing, and I might keep voting Stroll as my Bennett for the rest of the season. We shall see. Okay, looking forward, in 2 weeks' time, we have the Singapore Grand Prix. We no longer have a Malaysian Grand Prix, so I guess that's our home Grand Prix. And you guys will be there. I will not, because you guys watching this, you guys haven't sponsored me yet. So you can send me sponsorship tickets next time. But you guys will be reporting directly from the track. You can see my tears now.
I'll pick you up from the airport.
No, I'll be picking you up. Oh, sorry. Not the driver I want to be. Let's talk about the track. They always say it's the toughest track on the calendar. Why?
I've never driven there before. I can't really say, but based on all the drivers' complaints, it's not so much the physicality of driving the track, in a way, but it's the humidity and the heat that we all experience here. Like it's our everyday life. And drivers from Europe, from other places in the world coming here, even the mechanics, you see them like dripping with sweat.
Yeah.
I think they just suffer with that kind of humidity that we are very used to. So we're the superheroes, actually.
Yeah, it's one of the longest races in calendar in terms of time. I think it clicks off about 2 hours in the car in that heat. Drivers lose about 4 to 5 kilos of water weight just on that weekend alone. And managing time zones, because although some drivers deal with jet lag, but the sessions are at night, so trying to stretch that sleep with a lot of sunlight is also not that easy. So yeah, it's going to be an exciting Singapore Grand Prix.
All right. Well, safe travels, boys. We will be back after Singapore Grand Prix. I'm very, very excited. Don't forget to tune in on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. If you liked this video platform, do let us know, and we'll try our very best to get more and more of that out. If you prefer audio as well, just let us know. Leave us feedback, leave us questions. Thanks for all of those that have shared questions so far. And thank you so much for watching. My name is Daniel Woodruff.
And we're on time.
I'm Jasmine Jafar.
And that was Suited and Booted. Drive safe.